Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, I'm going to be comparing the new Hurricane to the Hemi to see if Ram has improved on the 1500 from an engine perspective, or if they've gone back. Before we get into this video, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to the Doug Smith Dodge Ram here in American Fork, Utah, for giving me some time with both of these trucks. Both of these trucks are available for sale for the time being, so if you're interested, link to their inventory in the description down below. Link to my car buying guide in the description down below as well. Let's get right into it. The Hurricane is a twin-turbo 3-liter inline-six that goes through an 8-speed automatic transmission. Fuel economy is 17 around town and then 24 on the highway, with power outputs being 420 horsepower and then 469 pound-feet of torque. Now, the Hemi is a 5.7-liter naturally aspirated V8 with a mild hybrid system paired to an 8-speed. Fuel economy is 18 around town and then 22 on the highway, with power outputs being 395 horsepower and then 410 pound-feet of torque. So before we move forward with this review, I want to mention a couple things. If you want to see more videos just like this, subscribe. I post content every single day. And also, I'm using a gimbal in this video. If you guys like how this footage turns out compared to what my videos normally look like, comment down below and I'll keep using it. Now, although this is an engine comparison, both of these trucks happen to be Bighorns with the Night Edition package. No mistake there. So I do want to show some of the differences with the trucks. First off, you can see the headlights here with the new Bighorn, and then look at the fog lights, kind of the shape there, and compare that to the old Bighorn, more circular with the design. And by the way, those are halogen lights, these are LEDs. But aside from that, you can see a lot of similarities between the trucks, but it's interesting how much headlights can change the front end design of a vehicle. Now, the wheel sizing with these trucks is identical, 275 by 55 by 20 in the front and in the rear with both of them. Now, there is a difference with spoke design. So here's what the new Bighorn wheels look like, all blacked out, kind of like chunky looking. And then with the old one, still chunky, but a little bit more flowy, I guess, if that's a word. No fender flares in the old Bighorn, but the new one does have fender flares. And then you can see there's actually a slight height difference with the truck. So it looks like the new one sits just a little bit higher compared to the old one, which is interesting. Well, scratch that last comment because we're on a little bit of a slope. That's why there's a mere height difference. I'm an idiot. Anyways, here's your side view on the new one. And then here's your side view on the old Bighorn. Now this is interesting. So key fobs are very similar, except the new one has tailgate drop-down, whereas the old one doesn't. And these are pretty much the same MSRP price. Now when it comes to the beds of the trucks, they're actually very similar. So here's the previous gen Bighorn. And then taking a look at the new one, a few differences, but for the most part they're pretty similar. Let's see if the tailgate's... So that's the new one. Then we'll pop over and see the tailgate with the old one. Yeah, they're the same. But what's not the same are the taillights. So here are the taillights on the previous gen. You can see like the Ram logo there in the center. You got the exhaust tips there at the bottom. Now the bumper kind of looks pretty much identical for the most part, the exhaust tips and all that, but you can see how the tailgate's a little bit different with the Ram logo, and then the taillights are substantially different. I think I like the old ones a little bit more, to be honest. Let me know which exterior style you like the best. Now I will save everyone a bunch of time. The only difference I've noticed here in the backseat area, this trim piece here, and then the seat material. So just the design and the cloth that they use. So this is the old one. And then this looks a little bit different with the trim piece there as well. But yeah, you can see with the new one, just slightly different trim here and there. And then different trim on the cloth seats, different design overall. And then also slightly different trim there. Now the most important parts can be comparing the payloads. So this is the previous gen, 1,680 pounds of payload with this truck. And if you're running towing capacity on both of them, if you get a 392 axle ratio, is about 11,000 pounds. But again, that difference with the trim here, and then with the cloth seats with both of the trucks. But you'll notice that like a lot of this switchgear and everything's the same. We pop into the new one. Steering wheel trim's also different. I noticed that. So that's a little bit different. And then some of the functionality here on the steering wheel too. So we'll kind of remember some of this. Start her up. Definitely a much different sound. See the gauge cluster there with the Bighorn logo. But yeah, here's the big infotainment system. We've got the whole center console system here. Oh, this is different too. We'll see that in the new one. Got a power outlet down below. And then the trim on the center console. It's kind of another thing with it. And then you got the double glove box, and then power setting window in the rear. So, yeah. Let's quickly pop into the new one. So payload capacity is 1,672 pounds, so you didn't really gain or lose any payload for, I mean, 8 pounds, right? That's not a big difference. Like I said, this trim here in the door panel, a little bit different. The look of the window controls with the new one is slightly different. And then these seats, you got kind of like a different style of cloth trim. I will say I like the bolsters in the new one a little bit more. It's a little bit more comfortable. And then popping in, start her up. So much quieter. You can barely hear it. But yeah, different trim on the steering wheel. Kind of has more like a synthetic feel and look. We've got a drive mode select on the steering wheel now. Adaptive cruise control with this. This is pretty much a straight carryover in the center, except the trailer brake controls do look slightly different than before. And then the trim on the center console, no, it kind of looks slightly different with it. Now when it comes to pricing, both of the trucks sticker for about $63,000, so like I said, they're pretty much the same price-wise. Well, we are going to start off in the Hemi first, and then we will do the Hurricane second. Also do a little fuel economy test with this comparison here. So that'll be another, I guess, layer of this engine slash truck comparison. Well, we are resetting the fuel economy right now with the Hemi. And I wanted to drive the Hemi first to, you know, get a feel for good old reliable Hemi, and to see if jumping into the new truck feels like I'm getting into a newer, nicer truck, and also see if that powertrain feels better right after driving the Hemi. What I will say right off the bat is the modern Hemi is actually not too rambunctious. I mean, you do get some V8 rumble, but it's not like crazy in your face loud. So I think that it's the best of both worlds, where you get that rumble but it's not obnoxious. You still get kind of like a quieter driving experience. It's a smooth engine too. I mean, it really does well with this 8-speed. It's got good torque. Gonna create a little bit of space. We'll get an acceleration with both of them here, just so we can see. So we'll get to the bottom of this kind of hill, and then yeah, right across this line, then we'll punch it. Hemi power, Hemi power. Smooth, naturally aspirated V8 power. Feels great. Genuinely feels great. Pretty comfortable ride too. Something else that I'm interested to see is if they actually drive any, like the ride quality feels any different. I don't think so. I think it's more so just going to be the sound and the feel of the engine between the two. And once we, so I'll swing back around, and once I get kind of towards the exit again, then that's where we'll tap the fuel economy. I know not the longest, best fuel economy test on the planet, but it'll at least show us if there's any sort of difference between the vehicles here. We are about to get to the exit, so we'll get our fuel economy reading for a short test, just so we can compare both of them and understand if I did more driving, then I'd be able to get a better, a higher reading with both of these trucks. So as soon as we hit this sign, then Okay, there's the line. Okay, 14.5 with the Hemi. That's our number that we'll compare to the Hurricane. Resetting our fuel economy here in the Hurricane before we set off. I think the suspension might be smoother on the new Ram compared to the previous gen. It almost seems like it's more luxury. Interesting. So far, you know, you're missing the Hemi rumble. There is that distinction. It's so quiet. You don't, like, it doesn't even sound like you have an engine when you're at idle. The Hemi, you can hear the, unless it's, you know, it does have auto stop start. This does too. But if the, you know, if the engine shuts off, you can hear the Hemi. But this, you just kind of get a little sound from the inline six. It's very quiet though. I think that's kind of what they're focusing on. They're like, you know, if we're not going to give the people V8 sounds, let's make sure the engine's as quiet as possible. Smooth though. Seems like it's got good torque and everything. So we'll get down to this line here and then we'll punch it with the new Hurricane. Wow! That's a big difference compared to the Hemi. That is a big, big difference. Wow. Don't get me wrong, the Hemi's, it's got that naturally aspirated response. It's great. This is just it. And understand, we're over 4,000 feet elevation here, so turbocharged engines always do better. Boy, oh boy, was that a substantial difference. Wow. That was impressive. And this is the standard output. This isn't even the high output Hurricane. Just the high output's gonna have, of course, more power. Can't go wrong with more power, am I right? Yeah, I do think the suspension's smoother in the new truck. It does feel a little bit more comfortable, which is good. We'll get up here and see what our final fuel economy reading is as soon as we hit this, not this sign, but the next sign after. That'll be our final reading. I think this is gonna have, over a short testing, this is gonna have a slightly lower reading than the Hemi did. So that's an interesting difference with the trucks. So it's this sign right here. This Tesla's trying to turn into me. I hate Teslas so much. Oh, people don't pay attention. They're too busy texting and driving on their Teslas. Okay, so passing the sign and 13.2. Okay, yeah, the new Hurricane. It's a cool engine. And so if this is just the Bighorn review, then I'll see you guys. And if you are still here for the comparison Hemi versus Hurricane, interesting. So over the same little track, again, I understand not the best fuel economy test on the planet, but over the same little track, the Hemi got better fuel economy, slightly better. And you look at the fuel economy readings and the numbers aren't all that different. And so just like other smaller displacement turbocharged engines, the real benefit to the quote-unquote environment, right, is going to be lower tailpipe emissions. It's not that it's going to go through less gas, it's simply that it's going to put out fewer emissions out of the tailpipe. And so, you know, in terms of Hurricane versus Hemi, I like the engine. I like this engine a lot. I do think that, you know, just like what other manufacturers are struggling with convincing people to go these turbocharged engines, I do think the fact that it doesn't get any better fuel economy is going to be kind of a hard sell for some people. But aside from that, yeah, it's got more power, doesn't sound as good, tow's about the same, payload's about the same. So you're basically, a good way to look at the Hurricane is it matches the Hemi in every single format and it accelerates quicker. I think that's the best way to cap it off. And so I guess you have to decide if you're going Hemi or Hurricane. Do you want the tried and true that sounds better, or do you want to go for the new thing that's quicker, but we're not so sure about, you know, what long-term reliability is going to be? Inline sixes are usually good, but time will tell. Let me know if you go Hurricane or Hemi.